Welcome to the Operate Intelligently podcast, the podcast for all things operations. We have another great episode for you on Geographic Information System Data, or GIS for short. Joining me today from the Dude Solutions product and GIS teams are Chuck Wright, Senior Product Manager, and Anna Ross, Senior Solutions Specialist. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do for the Dude. Anna, let's start with you.
Okay, so I am a Senior Solutions Specialist. I mainly implement our Connect GIS clients, as well as kind of help out the whole Dude team with any GIS questions, as well as helping to support LST with anything GIS that comes through.
And Chuck?
Hey, so I'm on our product management team. So specifically, I work with our products and GIS in particular to bring those in so we can leverage the power of GIS in the solutions that the Dude provides to our clients.
Great. Anna, I'm going to start with you. Could you tell us a little bit about what GIS is and how people use it?
Yeah, so GIS is basically geographically referenced data, and it will describe both the locations and characteristics of spatial features. So to bring that back down, a good example is Google Maps. So when you're looking at a Google map, you're seeing a couple different pieces of information at once. You might be seeing the street layer, you might be seeing restaurants or hotels. You're seeing all kinds of different information put together on one map so you can see all the spatial relations and how everything interacts with each other.
And Chuck, so why is this important to operations management? What benefit do people get from GIS data?
So thanks, Brian. Yeah, in operations, there's a ton of benefit, but let's just talk about some of the real top things that are kind of low-hanging fruit out there for people to take advantage of. So the first one is really having a reference base of where things are in the organization. Especially true for anybody that has any assets that are spread out over a large facility, perhaps over an entire county, or even in large agricultural operations. Knowing where those things are a lot of times is locked up in people's heads. So if somebody's out sick one day, somebody retires, where's that information? Where are those assets? One really funny story that I've got there is a town, and they were had a water leak, and they were searching for a water valve to turn that off so they could stop the leak, get it repaired. And they start tracing it back, and they just can't find this water valve. So it turns out after an hour of searching, a homeowner had decided that where that valve was located wasn't very attractive, and had built up a flower bed and pots and other things around that and obscured it. So it's really tough for them to find. Whereas if they had a GIS system combined with some modern technology like the GPS on your smartphone or tablet, they would have been able to walk right there and say, I know it's there. I know there's a flower bed, but I've got confidence in this data that I can literally dig in and find that to get everything repaired. So it can be a real big time saver. The other thing that, again, is really significant there is the ability to prioritize and organize your work. A great example there is maybe somebody that works in a permitting office. If I take a very strict first in, first out approach for requests from, say, citizens to go do a permitting inspection, I might be on the east side of town and then drive to the west side of town and then back to the east side of town, and I spend so much time traveling versus actually getting that work done. Whereas if I have that in a GIS system where I can see spatially where it is, rather than just planning my day out based on 1, 2, 3, I can group those things so if I'm in the same neighborhood. I can just get more done faster by spending less time traveling and more time actually executing on my job.
I mean, much like the way people are using Google Maps, where if you can add stops and kind of, especially if it's in the middle of the day, there's a lot of traffic, you can figure the best, fastest routes around. So yeah, I think that's a great example because the mobile technology does give us the ability to kind of zone in right on the spot where things are.
Yep, absolutely. And another benefit that people don't think about a lot, but I think is very important, is the ability to add additional protections for your workers. So, with the GIS system, being able to know where people are at, where they're working, allows them protections, for just general safety. So if a person's out by themselves working in a remote location, something happens, we know where they are at that time. Also, from more of a legal protection standpoint, if I can tell another quick story.
Sure, yeah.
We had a client call us up and say, hey, I'm really, really glad I had this because, we had someone that called in and said that, we damaged their mailbox, basically destroyed that, and they wanted the city to come back and replace that at our cost, etc., and basically blamed on one of the sanitation vehicles. And because we had geographic information on where that was, had real quick and easy data to pull up and say, heck, was it us? If so, let's do the right thing, let's fix it. Or in this particular case, we know where all of our vehicles were. Nobody was on your street at the time that this happened, so it wasn't us. And we had that kind of protection for ourselves and our employees.
You giving that example reminded me also of where I've actually seen it in my personal life. My children ride the school bus, and now I believe there's tracking devices on the buses because they get a text alert when the bus is coming. So and as well as if the bus is late. And I'm assuming as well the school board's also being able to use that data to calculate average time it takes to get the kids to school and back. It can tie even, I'm sure, into like energy consumption on the buses, fleet management, and other types of data needs.
Yep, absolutely. And what's really great about that, it's not just a benefit, in that case, back to a school board, but back to the students and the parents, because, again, how many of us had to wait for a school bus standing out in the rain or the snow or inclement weather, where, perhaps if we had a text alert knowing the school bus is going to be there at our stop in about 5 minutes, we could easily wait in a dry, warm, safe environment until it's time to go out.
As well as rush the kids out if they're dawdling too much. I have to do that sometimes with mine. So what types of organizations benefit the most from using GIS data?
Yeah, so I think any organization can benefit from the use of GIS, anywhere from healthcare, education, manufacturing, pretty much everyone, even banking, and maybe organizations you might not think of off the top of your head are using GIS now to help their organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. So some great examples. Actually, we were talking a little bit about government, education. Farming is a huge one. GIS is used in precision agriculture. There are some crops that have very specific pesticides or other treatments on the plants that they use that can be, thousands of dollars to apply, and by using precision GIS and GPS on tractors and farm equipment, they can ensure that they have exactly the right application and where that is. So that's another great example. Any kind of utilities, pipelining is also another big one. So any oil and gas industry is very large. Another one, I don't think people may relate to GIS, but is pretty critical, is in meteorology. So think, for example, of you're watching the weatherman on TV and that map and all of that data. Well, that's GIS as well, and that data is used for a lot of different purposes. So think about the insurance or reinsurance industry, where they can look at who they insure. And geographically, it makes a very big difference if a storm comes in and my entire portfolio that I'm insuring is in a very tight cluster, or if it's spread out. If it's in a tight cluster, a major hurricane comes in, then 100% of the people I insure may be impacted. Whereas if I have that spread out geographically, I'm able to reduce my risk, provide overall better service by knowing that it's very unlikely for a large percentage of those insured to be impacted all at the same time. So very easy to see those patterns in a map form or GIS. Not so easy to see it in a more standard tabular Excel spreadsheet data view.
Yeah. Well, and that reminds me also of IBM buying the Weather Channel and tying it in with Watson, because it's feeding it constant real-time GIS data. And I actually saw a demo because it was interesting. It was more, say, on the procurement and facility management side of that. But they were saying, the scenario could be like you've got manufacturing facilities on the Pacific coast and a typhoon might be coming up, or even on the East Coast and a hurricane, and where they were using AI to start telling, okay, maybe it's time to shift operations, to close this plant down, shift operations, keeping their manufacturing lines or keeping their production lines going, but still dealing with a potential imminent weather threat.
Right. Great example, Brian. And another one I know, Anna, you're as well very familiar with, is the ability to find additional patterns in data that you can't find otherwise. And so a great example of that, if we think of somebody who is running a wastewater system, certain pipes might have additional failures or need additional maintenance. And when you just look at it, why is that? Well, we don't know. Anna, one of the reasons we would look for that would be?
Yeah, so there might be different types of layers that can play into that. So you've got type of soil, operational data, road work, so on and so forth that can play into that.
Okay, so having different soil types like clay versus sandy might impact settling for those pipes.
Exactly.
Somebody's got some heavy equipment out for the roads.
Yep.
Maybe that has damaged a pipe underground without somebody's knowledge, those kind of things.
Yeah, you'll be able to have all that information in one place.
So then, you kind of go and look at, do you see those patterns? Have they happened at a frequency maybe that's out of the regular, normal operations and such? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got an exciting programming announcement for our listeners. There's another Brian at the Do that will be joining the podcasting family. I want to welcome Brian Andreyko to come in and tell us a little bit about his new programming.
Thanks, Brian. Got some really exciting news. So we're actually launching a new series called the GovGab Radio Podcast. We'll be talking to civic leaders around the country, small population, the very large cities, a lot of mayors and city managers, just folks that are really out there trying to improve their communities, looking at challenges that may be coming up and how do they actually solve those. So some really neat stuff, and excited to share that with everyone.
Sounds great. How can people tune in to GovGab Radio?
Yeah, so actually it'll be slotted underneath the Operate Intelligently podcast every other week. So every 2 weeks, you'll see it as a series for GovGab Radio. So definitely encourage everyone to check it out. I think there'll be some great takeaways from it.
Sounds awesome. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Brian.
So how does somebody get started with GIS in general? I'm assuming a lot of times people probably have data, and it's just how would they leverage that data?
Yeah, so if they've already got existing data that they've been maybe building up over several years, or that someone created maybe 10 years ago and they're ready to pick back up, the best thing for them is going to be to just go ahead and just dive into that data. If they need help kind of getting to that point and getting started, there are so many resources online for GIS. You can actually just type into Google how to get started with GIS, and tons of YouTube videos will come up, websites, all kinds of resources. So getting started that way is an option. There's always the Esri route as well. They've got tons of resources on their website.
Yeah, could you tell me, who's Esri?
Yeah, we are Esri partners, and Esri has a GIS platform. Arc Desktop is one of them that our clients can purchase, and it is a way to manage, edit, store your GIS data. So tons of resources online of how to use that software.
I add to that also, it's really important just to figure out, what's the outcome you're looking for from it. So I've seen people that hear about GIS, they get really excited about GIS, they might spend a lot of money getting GIS going, a program system, a consultant in, and then, great, I've got some data. And they're not necessarily getting a lot out of that data. So instead, what I liked, with some of your questions, Brian, is really related to operations management. Think about, what does this do? How's it going to improve my operations? We've talked about that some, but I think really having an operational first, how is this going to enhance it? How is it going to make all of my employees more efficient? How can we have some cost savings? How can I have that institutional knowledge? Is really important. And then along with that, the world of GIS is huge. I'd like to say it's it was big data before big data was a thing. Yeah. Where do you start moving forward with GIS? It can be intimidating because people, you look around, and we're in a studio right now, and when I look around, I think about all the things that could be in a facility GIS. So I've got the room. I've got the flooring, I've got furniture, I've got lighting fixtures, I've got switches, doors. All of those potentially could be pulled in as assets into a GIS system. But of those, which are the ones that are important? Where do I want to take the time and the effort? Where do I want to get started? Maybe it is a case where energy management is something that's important. I want to start with the lighting. Maybe it's a little bit broader, where the HVAC system of the building is where I want to get started. So maybe we start with mapping that first, and then as that shows its value, people are utilizing it, you'll find kind of a groundswell of people asking for more. So it goes from, that's great for our HVAC, it's great for our lighting, but I need to look at some space management, perhaps replacing the flooring, knowing some square footages, knowing what type of flooring's in each room, what's the requirements for each room, because the flooring in the studio is going to be very different than what's in a bathroom or a food services area. So having all of that data, we can start to build that out over time. One point I'd like to just emphasize is it doesn't have to be done all at once. Right?
I think with any data projects, and I had the same challenge sometimes with, say, pulling in a lot of online data. There's a huge amount. It can get overwhelming. So I agree. You have to really start off small and say, well, what are the one or two questions you want to know first? And let's work on that, because during that process, yes, you kind of work through some kinks. You start asking the questions. You start clarifying maybe how you're going to categorize things, or what's really important, what's maybe important, but you have to wait till a later date to really tackle. But I think coming out of that exercise, you really get, that nice prioritization with what you said, like a couple quick wins that you can kind of show people, like, here's the value in this. Even if it's not even a hard savings to begin with, but you've identified where you can have a hard savings down the road.
Right, and one of the things that's really helpful now that used to not always be as readily available is what we would call base data. So it's kind of what your operational data would sit on top of. There was a time when that was, just a blank sheet of paper. Your data would be essentially on a blank surface, and you didn't have that sense of real-world context perhaps to it. Whereas now, through vendors like Esri, Google, we have great satellite imagery available. We have street maps, topographic maps, other items where when you put the GIS data on there, you really do get that real-world context.
Do you enjoy the Operate Intelligently podcast? If so, go to iTunes and give us a review. We'd love to hear from you. So where do you see GIS kind of going in the future? I mean, like you said, there's so much out there. What are a couple things that you're seeing that are going to come around the corner?
Yeah, so I feel like the possibilities are endless for where we're headed with GIS. I know right now some of the options of things is to be able to see, so you have utility data, especially pipes and whatnot, you can see those in 3D instead of just a flat surface on a map. So you're really able to locate where these pipes are, know where you need to get your work done, and just having that 3D visualization is great.
So I saw some things where some workers were using, I think it's called augmented reality, out in the field. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Anna?
Yeah, so basically they can put on the goggles and they'll be able to see the data right there in 3D. So
yeah, we talked about that on one of the recent episodes with Paul LaChance, talking about exponential technologies, and he gave similar examples, more so if a worker had to go up on like a ladder and work on, like, say, an AC unit, but the subject matter expert couldn't do that. He was able to talk through, have something like Google Glasses there and walk them through the process, make sure they had everything, the right tools and such. It's just really neat stuff. Right,
and as Anna was saying, with those, you can actually see that modeled information, right there, superimposed with what you're seeing with your real eyes. Yeah. And so underground features, again, those pipes and other things, it's like you're literally seeing through the earth, and combining with that, someone back in the office can see that as well. So yeah, it's really, really cool technology. Some other things that we're seeing is just historically, that GIS has been maybe confused a little bit with the concept of GPS, which is the global positioning satellite system we have. But they're two very different things, very complementary. And with that, GIS historically has been more for things that are outdoors. And that's changing. So indoor-based GIS is also becoming very powerful. New technologies are happening with smart lighting and other sensors where when someone is indoors, you can use just like GPS, know where you are. So that's opening up a whole new world, as well as with the 3D modeling, so that it's not just a flat Earth view, but we have that vertical component as well. So we
like
know
a topographical map.
Yeah. It's being used quite a bit in retail right now, so a lot of people maybe not realize it, but your personal cell phone, unless you make some certain settings changes, people can ping off of that, and even if they're not going into your phone, they know there's a phone there. So a retailer, as soon as you walk in, has the ability to know where people are. Maybe not that it's you, but that people are there, and so they can analyze traffic patterns through the floor, know where to position merchandise for highest visibility, and then start making experiments on how to change that, etc. So really bringing that GIS indoors and making it more ubiquitous, so it's everywhere, will be next 3 to 5 years.
Oh, that's cool. That's some neat technology. So we've talked a lot about technology, but I wanted to ask both of you what your favorite part of GIS is.
Yeah, so for me, my favorite part of GIS is I'm a really visual person. So being able to see all the different components that someone might choose to put into a map, different GIS layers, and being able to analyze it and being able to come to conclusions and help people make decisions is one of my favorite aspects of GIS.
Cool.
Yeah, and for me, it's much similar to Anna. Really, it's about helping people, having those solutions, and really bringing out additional insights into how people can make a difference in their organizations from seeing things they've never seen before. It's like kind of taking some blinders, lifting a veil, and seeing a whole new world that you didn't know was there.
Well, data always tells a great story.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I want to thank both of you for joining me today and giving us some information on GIS data and how to use it.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
If you want to learn more about GIS and how it can impact your organization, check out our show notes. We'll have links to some more. And until next time, I'm Brian McDonald coming to you from Dude Solutions. Thank you for listening to the Operate Intelligently podcast, produced by Dude Solutions. You can reach us by emailing dspodcast@dudesolutions.com or check us out on the web at dudesolutions.com.